My name is Rich Schmidt. I'm here with Matt Hodges, and we're interviewing Dennis Anderson today. It's July 21st, 2021, and Dennis, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate this. Let's start with a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about your background before Linfield. Where were you born, and where did you grow up?
I was born in San Francisco, and I grew up mainly in Menlo Park, California.
Tell me about your kind of early life. Did you play a lot of sports? Did you do other things? What did your family do?
Well, my dad was a sheet metal worker. I was not involved a lot in sports early on. I was involved in newspapers from a very young age, from age 9.
So delivering papers at that point, or producing them?
Writing them, trying to produce them. Of course, there wasn't. I didn't have much of a market for my productions, but I did produce a weekly neighborhood newspaper starting at age 9.
That's awesome. So tell me about the decision to come to Linfield. How did you hear about Linfield, and why did you choose to come here?
My high school girlfriend got a scholarship to Redlands, and at that time, Redlands and Linfield were both Baptist colleges, and I, from reading some of her material on Redlands, I learned about Linfield. I didn't feel I was academically qualified to go to Redlands, but I was accepted at Linfield.
Tell me about your first impressions of Linfield and of McMinnville. Had you been to the area before? Had you spent any time in Oregon?
No, I had not. Linfield, McMinnville was a very small town. 3,500 perhaps. The school was, of course, much smaller than it is now. Paul Durham was the football coach, and he was also the athletic or co-athletic director, and I think co-basketball coach. And because Linfield didn't pay much at those times, he also worked downtown. He worked in the parks department downtown and did a lot of things. He was an amazing man, really amazing man.
So you got up here to Linfield. We'll talk more about Coach Durham here in a second, but I'm curious. You got up here to Linfield. What were your sort of expectations? What were you planning to major in? And tell me about some of your sort of favorite classes, favorite professors.
Good question. I majored in journalism. I cannot recall readily right now what my favorite classes were or my favorite professors were. There was the journalism professor whose name I'm blanked on right now was a really nice guy, and I enjoyed him, and I enjoyed working for the school paper.
Tell me about that experience. Obviously, you were interested in newspapers from a young age. What kind of work did you do for the school newspaper, and how did you find the work? How did you enjoy the work?
As I recall, I was appointed sports editor almost immediately, which just surprised me because I was barely there as a student, and I wrote a column and. I called it "Lets the Cat Out," like as in "Lets the cat out of the bag," and I had fun. It was good fun.
So let's talk about football a little bit. What prompted you to be part of the football team here? What did you come in expecting to play football here?
Yes, that was my intention. It was my whole intention for coming here.
So tell me about that, and about what do you remember from your first practice or first time being around the football team?
The first, what I remember from my first practice is that the first play, all 22 players were on the ground. And I'd never seen that before. Everybody, including me, was on the ground. Another thing I remember vividly is that no one in those days wore face masks. And so I did because of my glasses, but nobody else did. So there were lots of broken noses.
I love that. So what position did you play?
I was a defensive end.
So tell me about your sort of first impression of the size and the skill and the speed of players. Were you prepared? What were your expectations of the people you were going to be playing with and against?
Everybody, of course, was bigger and faster than I had played against in high school. I wasn't impressed at that time with Durham's coaching. I thought my high school coach had been a better coach, but he grew on me as time went on. I remember once being knocked down and pinching a nerve in my neck, which they now call a stinger. And I remember Durham looking disgustedly at me and saying, "Move the drill over here, away from me. Just go away from this guy."
What other sort of memorable moments do you remember from your time as a player? Are there specific games or specific teammates that stand out in your memory?
Howard Morris, of course. Although here I was a unrecruited, skinny 6'5" guy from California. Howard was I think he was a state champion wrestler and much sought after recruit in football. And somehow, I don't know how he and I were matched up as tackling partners for prep practice. And he would just beat the hell out of me every day. But he always extended a hand to help me up afterwards. Really nice guy. He and I became very good friends.
So I'm curious. You mentioned that you didn't really know much about Linfield until fairly close to when you got here. Linfield obviously didn't have much of a football tradition at that point. So I'm curious about what was your motivation to play here, given that it wasn't exactly known as a football school.
Because I thought I could. I didn't. I had been injured my senior year of high school, and I only played one game or something before I was hurt. And so my high school coach wanted changing positions. I was a quarterback in high school, and he suggested that because I'd been hurt that I should come up here and play end.
So what was your first season here? What year was your freshman year?
1954. That was my only season there. I transferred to San Jose State after that year and didn't play there.
So obviously, just after you left, Linfield did become a bit of a football school. So I'm curious. They had a winning season in 1956 and won the league title.
Right.
Tell me about, were you still following the team? Were you still keeping in touch with the guys at that point?
I'm not sure. I don't think I was following Linfield too much until my son went there. And my son came up and played on the 86 national championship team. He started on 3 special teams. And that's when I started to really follow closely.
So you mentioned a bit about Coach Durham earlier. So you mentioned a nice guy, a busy guy, and a coach who grew on you a bit. Tell me a bit more about him. What were your first impressions of him, and how did he kind of grow on you?
Well, my first impression was that I didn't think he was that good a coach. I didn't think he was as good as my high school coach. But Linfield was a small school, a poor school, and he also had to teach classes. And he had to work. He was the sports editor of the News Register. And he had a job in the, I think he ran the softball league for the summer parks department. And he just, a very busy guy. Mm-hmm. And I became really impressed with him after he and I both moved to Hawaii at separate times. But I got to know him very well in Hawaii. He was an extremely well-read man. And he had a wonderful wife, and who unfortunately died early, died young. But he just was a great individual.
What was the culture of the team like when you were on it? Did it seem like a team that was going to eventually win, or were you surprised by the success?
I was surprised by the success. It didn't. No, the culture wasn't. I would say a winning culture at the time I played. The 1 year I played. Mm-hmm. 2 years after that. Now a lot of the guys who were in my class became very good. Two years after. We didn't know they were going to be, but they were.
So you mentioned that you left Linfield and went to San Jose State. Tell me about your life after college.
I was a dropout. I was more interested in writing for newspapers than I was in going to school. I never did complete my degree. I went to College of San Mateo, a JC, and I played intramural football there, and I was invited, I would say, to play varsity basketball there, but I didn't. I sometimes regret that.
I understand. So after college, then you were interested in writing for papers. So where did that take you?
I was hired again when what would have been my junior year of college. I was hired by the Redwood City Tribune to be its assistant sports editor, and I went to work there until I moved to Hawaii, I guess.
What prompted the move to Hawaii?
Change, needed a change. That was the most radical change I could think of. My wife at that time had lived in Hawaii and knew something about it, and it just seemed like a good move.
And what kind of work did you do when you were there?
In Hawaii, I started out as a copy editor for the daily paper, first working the night shift and Sunday shift. And then they moved me to dayside when they could see I had some talent and they wanted to make more use of my abilities. So they moved me to daytime.
So were you focused mainly as a sports writer, or were you doing more general journalism?
More general journalism at that time, yeah. The sports editor asked me to come into sports, but I didn't. I stayed in news side.
So you mentioned that you weren't really following Linfield football too closely until your son attended. Tell me about your sort of impressions of Linfield football since you left, or since you started paying attention again. What are the changes? What's different about Linfield football in the '80s and into now than it was when you were there?
Oh, I mean, it's difference of night and day. Have a winning attitude, a winning program. I'm very proud of being a person who discovered, would you say, the streak and got that recognized as a national record. And it's just night and day difference. It's really good for football now.
Well, obviously, let's talk about the streak and about your discovery of it. I know it was quite a process. So tell me about that. What point did it become something you were interested in researching, and how did you research it?
Uh, Paul Durham, now if I can recall all this correctly, Paul Durham uh, asked me to find, he'd had success, three NAIA championships in 5 years, and he wanted to know how Linfield ranked uh, among the teams uh, playing at that time. So I started to research those teams, and in doing that, I found that there were very few teams that had winning records every year. So I expanded that research. I wrote to all 300 teams in the 300 schools in the NCAA that had winning records, and got the results back. And from that, to discover that, my goodness, we were at that time, I think we were third. Uh, Notre Dame and maybe Harvard. I think Notre Dame and had 42, and Harvard about the same, and we were third. And then we moved up and passed them.
So tell me what did that tell you about Linfield football, and how did you go about letting people know, both people affiliated with Linfield and the football team, and other people outside of the program?
Uh, I was fortunate in that the Los Angeles Times had sent a reporter up for a game to cover a game against I think it was Oregon State, and on one day he had a day off, and he came up to Linfield to see what it was about, and they had me go meet him and talk to him, and then he wrote a big story about it, and then that went national, and Linfield became known nationally at that time.
What was the reaction? Were people kind of generally aware that Linfield? I mean, thinking about like Linfield football players, past and present, and coaches, were they generally aware that they had been good that long, or was it a big surprise to people?
I think it was a surprise. I don't think that they thought of themselves at that time as being that big a deal.
Mm-hmm.
But now, of course, they know they are. In Division Three, I sometimes call Division Three as the division where the white guys play.
What was the reaction from elsewhere? What was the outside reaction from the LA Times article, and from the did you get a lot of questions? Did a lot of people come to you or to the school with questions or reaction?
I really don't recall. I got some. I got some inquiries. There was a lot of interest in the streak, and I remember Brigham Young writing to me, and they had a break-even season. It was 6-1 or something like that, and they wrote to me and asked me if that was good enough to continue the streak, and I said no. Wasn't.
That's not a winning season. You can't take that.
No, right, exactly.
So tell me from your perspective, what the streak means to you. What does it represent? And if people ask you about it, what would you tell them? What does it mean for Linfield?
Well, it's the only one. I mean, it's first in the nation, and I'm very proud of what I did to promote that, get it recognized.
What would you like others to take away from it?
Mainly to know that even though it's on a Division III level, that you can have consistent success and be, and mainly Linfield not only has success, they do it with integrity. Their players are good people. You never see cheap shots. They just play the game the way it was meant to be played.
And obviously, you have a pretty personal connection to it because your son played through part of the streak as well, won a championship. So I'm curious, what does that add from your perspective as a proud parent? What does that add to the streak?
I guess I'm more proud of what he did. Definitely more proud of what he did than what I did. And he's done. He did graduate from Linfield. He played about 3.5 years, and he was injured. Couldn't play his fourth year, but he's gone on to do good things, and I'm proud of him.
Excellent. So obviously, you've kind of come full circle too, back in McMinnville. So I'm curious. Tell me what at Linfield, the institution, how it's changed since you were here. What are the biggest changes, and what is it like being around campus?
I'm not around campus very much. Have a injury now and pretty much confined to my room. But the school has grown immensely, and especially in prestige as well as in size.
So are you still involved with Linfield anyway? I know you're a Hall of Fame inductee here. So
yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not involved at all.
As you obviously mentioned Hall of Fame inductee, I'm curious, what was your reaction to that, and how did you feel about being part of the Linfield Sports Hall of Fame?
Oh, I was very proud, of course. I was inducted not as a player or athlete, but I was inducted for the contributions that I had made to getting the school program recognized. Mm-hmm. And I was very gratified.
So as you look ahead for Linfield, for the school and for the football team, what are your hopes for the future for the institution and for the football team?
I hope for the institution to continue to grow. They've had some setbacks recently involving faculty and alumni getting in some trouble with their involvement with students and so forth. And that's been unfortunate. They've made the Oregonian newspaper for the wrong reasons quite a bit recently. But I hope the school can continue to grow and be a good place.
And what about for the football team?
Oh, just keep doing what they're doing. They're just, Joe Schmidt has done a terrific job. I think, Ed Rushman is one of my best friends and people I admire most. But I think Joe Smith is who Joe Smith played in '89, his freshman year, and I was around that year as a volunteer assistant, and he's been outstanding. He's really good man.
Excellent.
And now I guess his son is a quarterback now.
Amazing. The sort of family legacy of Linfield football is pretty amazing.
Yes. Yeah, I think guys go there and have success and want their offspring to go there too.
It's a good thing. That's a very good thing. All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Matt to follow up with some questions. I kind of taking you through what I want. So I'm just going to tilt the camera here a little bit for you. And Matt's going to follow up with his questions.
Great. I was just curious if you could share how you and Paul reconnected when you were over in Hawaii. Did you stay in touch since you left the program, or how did that kind of rekindle itself?
No, we weren't in touch after I left the program. I happened to see him, meet him at a University of Hawaii game once, and I'm not even sure if he remembered who I was, but I introduced myself, and we became good friends, and spent a lot of time. We used to have lunch together every week. He had a wonderful wife who unfortunately died early, and that affected him a lot. But just a great man.
For sure. We've heard lots of stories about Coach Durham. When you were putting together your questionnaire for other schools, what were your expectations? Like, were you surprised that nearly every program responded to your survey?
I don't think I was surprised. I don't know that I had great expectations, but most of them, the sports information directors at most of the schools are good people and do their job right. I don't think I was surprised.
It's just hard to imagine this day and age that many people would share that information willingly.
Well, I guess maybe I shouldn't have expected it, but it was good, yeah.
For sure. Obviously, you just kind of missed Ed Rushman as a player and student at Linfield. Had you kept in touch with Ed before your son played for him at Linfield?
Well, in those years, you didn't have scouting films from the same year. So in my freshman year, the scouting films we had were from the previous year's game. And so I saw every one of Ed Rushman's senior year games. And he was just awesome player. He was drafted by the Detroit Lions, as I recall, fifth round, I think, pick. And he had this ability to bring his knee up a little harder than the tackler was hitting him and knocking the tackler on his back and running over him. He was quite a guy.
No doubt. You mentioned you were good friends with Howard Morris. Is there a story that you always remember or stand out about Howard when he was here at Linfield?
Well, I think I might have mentioned that Howard and I were tackling partners, and it didn't seem natural here. He was a state champion wrestler and I think all-state football player, and he was like 5'11", and I was 6'5", and we didn't seem to be well matched. And he frankly beat the hell out of me, but he always extended a hand and helped me up. And I've continued to remain friends with his wife, Ginger. Howard got married, I think, in his sophomore year. And I went down to Klamath Falls for a couple of events involving him. When he was interned into the Hall of Fame there at the high school and so forth.
Yeah, I've kept Ginger in the loop on this project, and actually she's donating a couple of Howard's leather helmets to this project.
Oh, great! That's great. I wish I'd kept mine.
Well, I was going to say if you have any, go ahead.
They took my leather helmet away from me at Linfield, gave me a plastic one, and I wish I'd asked for it back just to keep it.
For sure. They're so unique, and it's fun talking about this project, just trying to think of how in shape a lot of these guys were, and just the force with nothing but leather.
Yeah, the uniforms were not nearly as advanced as they are now, and it was a lot easier to get hurt. The hip pads, for instance, had hard ridges, and that was how I broke my wrist in high school. Was a guy came over the top and landed on my wrist with that hard ridge hip pad.
Ooh. Ow.
Excuse me.
When you came to Linfield, how was the equipment compared to your high school program?
Good question. Good question. It was better, I guess. As I said before, I didn't think Durham at that time was as good a coach as my high school coach, but the equipment was good. The main thing I think I mentioned before was no face masks. So a lot of broken noses.
For sure. Do you recall sort of the style of play when you were playing football in general, regardless if it was at Linfield?
Much less passing than now. It's mainly a running game. And the audibles at that time were just to change the holes you're going to run through. It's 2 up or 2 down meant you went to either to the 4 hole or the 6 hole or the 7 hole. And now they have, of course, very fancy audibles.
Sure. As someone who spent quite a bit of time with Coach Durham in comparison to a lot of the players that we've interviewed, what was his reaction to the streak, or what did he think of the streak?
I'm sure he was very proud of it. I don't recall that we talked about it a lot, but I know he was proud of being a part of it.
Sure. Did he ever share with you, his experience coaching at Linfield and how he kind of got the program to such a winning success? Did he ever share any stories or secrets, or how he kind of turned a program that was frankly on the skids into a very robust winning program?
Paul didn't talk about himself a lot. He was very well read, just a fine man, but he didn't promote himself.
That's fine. That's what makes this kind of tough. Is we'd love to know, but we've gotten that a couple of occasions that he was he cared more about others than himself. Was I think the takeaway that we've gotten repeatedly through these interactions. But I was just curious, as someone who had kept in touch with him much greater than some of the other guys we've talked with. So
yeah, he after his wife died, it was a real tragic thing for him, and I think he somewhat changed after that.
Did Paul ever share what just his thoughts about the state of Linfield were when he came back to campus and for the reunions and things like that?
Again, I don't recall that he did. I know he was really proud of the progress that Linfield had made, both in football and academically.
That's fair. I always wonder, there's a lot of things on campus now. There's a statue, there's a foyer, and several other things that bear his name. I wonder what his reaction would be to those things today.
Oh, he'd be, I guess, shy about it.
That's fair.
He never liked to call attention to himself.
That's fair.
I'm really, the statue, I'm really happy for that, because I didn't feel he was properly recognized on campus until the statue was built. And that was built not by the college, but by funds provided by fans of his.
Correct. So, wonderful. Those are the extra questions I had. I don't know if Rich has anything else, but what we're hoping to do with this, as I mentioned, I'm writing a story for the Linfield magazine about this project. All of these conversations that we've recorded over the past year and a half or so are going to be housed in an official collection here at the Linfield Archives. And I'm hoping to do something with a video producer of trying to mash all these conversations together to share these with the greater Linfield community, to shed some light on many aspects of Linfield football and the streak itself that I don't think most are aware of. We embarked on this project as this upcoming season, or it would have been last season, would have been 65 years of the streak. And that just seems like a pretty significant number, more so than 62 or 64. And to kind of draw attention to that fact, we started this project and have collected a lot of fun stories, including many of the things you've shared today. So I can't thank you enough for taking time to sit down with us and recall a lot of great times at Linfield. I'm hoping to potentially do a team reunion as well this fall for what would be the game that would clinch the streak on the weekend of October 16th.
Great.
So hopefully you might be able to be a little bit more mobile during that time, because we certainly would love to have you at the game and be a part of the reconnection with a lot of guys that you might remember.
Thanks very much. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. Well, thanks so much, and I'll keep you posted on where this all ends up.
Great.
Thank you so much, Dennis. It was wonderful talking to you today. We appreciate it.
Aloha.
Aloha.